All right. Good evening, folks. You are
Good
here
evening.
for the second episode of I-12 GIA Real Talk. I'll be your host this evening. I'm Fogg. We'll have your Rennie as usual. And we've been graced with the presence of the Nomad tonight. So hopefully he'll have some good information for us. We're going to be discussing several topics tonight. We're going to do the election in South America or in Venezuela, and we're going to be talking about the recent murders in England and some other stuff that Rennie's got. And Nomad is just going to do his Nomad stuff, and we're going to kind of go from there. So, Rennie, why don't you go ahead and start us off, buddy?
I'm going to deviate a little bit. Let's start about what happened in Lebanon the other day.
Okay.
How Israel took out the leader of Hezbollah,
Okay.
who also I found out yesterday was the same guy that was the mastermind behind the 1983 bombing of the Marine barracks in Beirut.
Yeah.
So, I was before. Hold on, just a minute. I was looking for that today because I'd heard the same thing, and I was looking for doing some searches for confirmation. That's been completely scrubbed. I can't find any links or anything for that anywhere.
Probably scrubbed something like that,
which makes me wonder why. But anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm glad Israel did what they did, and you kind of expected that there was going to be some fallout. And then I sent you a text, I think, 2 nights ago. U.S. base in Iraq was under attack, and the U.S. Responded in a defensive posture up by the Iranian border. And then the next thing you know, a cruise missile goes through the bedroom of the leader of Hamas there, who was attending the funeral or the coronation or whatever of the new president. And so they've promised debt to Israel over that. So Israel's actually calling back all their reservists. So, Nomad, why don't you chime in on this?
All right. My understanding is 108,000 reservists who are overseas who have Israeli citizenship are being told to prepare to move between now and November. That's what I heard this afternoon. Second thing is that Ismail Hayane, which is the guy that was killed, he's the political leader of he was this is the Hamas guy that was basically in Tehran that was wiped out by them. But the Hezbollah guy in Lebanon, he has a lineage going back to the 80s as well. There was an outfit which were pro-Israeli, but were Druze and Lebanese based, and they were called the Christian Militia. And the guy who used to run that was a guy called Wally Jumblatt, was a guy. It was mid-80s. So after the Beirut Marine bombing, basically intel services in that area upped their game a little bit. Considering that the colonial powers that were in that area for over half a century, 70, 80 years, the French in particular had a lot of intel, because if people realize with the Middle East, the majority of the engineering in the major cities that were former colonial powers were German and French. The British ruled it, as in Palestine, going back in that area. But what you're looking at is that there was a lot of infrastructure already put in place that was Western based. Lebanon itself is a very interesting place. What was it? Sniper's Alley used to be called the Bekaa Valley. The Bekaa Valley was notorious in the mid 80s for everything that went on, and then kidnappings all the way up until almost the mid 90s. They had about 10 years of successful interactions with everything that was going on. So the Hezbollah thing goes back an awful lot longer than recent news events. It goes back since the early 60s, mid 70s, and Iran is back in everything again. So yeah. Iran has admitted, they've said for revenge for this guy being wiped out at the president's inauguration. They want to do something in return with it. The 300 drones that were sent out on the last time when they hit the Houthis, this is going to be this scale is going to be different again now. So the posture from the IDF is going to be different too. My own belief is that if Israel feels threatened, because Erdogan, the Turkish leader, has said that he's going to do something because he wants to free the Palestinians and stop what's going on.
Let me stop you there for a minute. So Erdogan's an Ottoman. So what would his interest be?
Okay, it's all down to tribal. It goes back to tribal connections and some religious things. Turkey is a secular country by way of the version of Islam that they have there, but he's very much the Ottoman Empire. That's in his mindset. That is actually what he's looking to do. He's looking to have a Turkish empire. When the Kurds in northern Kurdistan, in northern Iraq, going back to the first Desert Shield, Desert Storm, the Kurdish end of it, they fought alongside Turkish troops for a while against Saddam's people when Chemical Ali, that guy, was wiping out people with the gas. And then all of a sudden, when they became useful, the Kurdistan resistance formed and evolved into a thing called the Peshmerga. The Peshmerga, I remember going back in another uniform, going back many, many years ago, the Peshmerga were primarily independent Bedouins that went around. And so you have a cultural connection going back thousands of years. You have a religious end to it, and you've got a trade end of it. So Turkey never liked northern Iraq because it basically had extensive trading routes going back over the centuries, even before the pre-Ottoman Empire. But Turkey is the largest standing army in NATO in Europe. There's 75.8 million people in Turkey. 34 million potentially could be called up. Our US bases and NATO bases for forward action, for forward air control, is in Turkey. If Turkey gets involved in this, we're screwed. We've got no air corridor, or we have to fly around Turkey to go back into Jordanian airspace and then help Israel. So this has a direct implication with it, and Turkey knows what it's doing. Turkey is going to use this leverage because Turkey is also geographically placed between the Bosphorus and Caspian Sea. So oil and hydrocarbons being supplied to Europe for the winter comes via Turkey, comes through the Balkans. So it's a very strategic geopolitical posture by the Turks threatening Israel. They're seen to support the Arab neighbors, but there's a lot more implications to it.
Especially since Putin threatened to cut off gas and oil to the European Union too.
Absolutely. And here's the thing. Putin is clever, right? Putin learns from history and he studies history, right? So he's got a special director in the FSB, which is the modern KGB, and they study past conflicts and whatever. And it's like any military college for any standing army in the world. But he knows by cutting off gasoline and oil to the civilian end of European forces, he also cuts off NATO supply, which means we got to ship all that happy stuff across the sea to Europe. So it's almost like you had in World War II, when you had pipelines under the ocean from the UK, from England into the front into northern France, and now the same thing again. So the Iranian Navy is quite extensive, not enough to stop anything. But Iran is nothing to be underestimated with. And just the inconvenience and nuisance factor that Turkey, by taking a posture on something, can dramatically affect the planning capabilities of any future military action in the area, including what the Israelis do. Because the Israelis depend upon US having access to airspace over Turkey. That shuts down a corridor for resupply.
Yeah. So now let me ask you this. I saw an interview the other day. One of the leaders of Hamas, he goes, Israel's going to need to kill each and every last one of us, because if not, we'll reconstitute with assistance from Iran. Now, a girl I'm friendly with so I'm Jewish by conversion. A girl I'm friendly with was born Jewish. I said Israel needs to wipe out. They need to keep going. They need to flatten everything in Gaza, kill
Correct.
every last thing that's living and breathing.
Mhm.
And she agreed with me. You know, for a woman to agree with me on a topic like that, it's like seeing Jesus Christ walk on water. You know, there you go. There you go.
Right.
Right there, brother. So, anyway, what say you about that?
Well, the last time I was doing a bit of mischief, somebody senior said to us at a briefing, they said, this is going to continue for at least 20 years. And the unofficial version of it, I'm not speaking for IDF in any way here, right? Because this stuff is going to go everywhere once it's out, okay? But the philosophy behind the defensive action and proactive action by IDF forces is that the tip of the iceberg being the analogy. The 10% you see on the surface is not doing the work. It's the 90% below the water. So I remember being in a room where people said there'll be bodies floating in the streets of Europe for the next 20 years. They're going to wipe out a generation, not just a family, a generation, because this has been allowed to pass. So, I mean, I absolutely feel that Israel is now fighting for its very existence. And so from that point of view, game on. There's no rules anymore.
No turning back.
No turning back. They can turn back.
Right.
They can.
Okay, I've got a question about along the same line. Yeah, there we go. Make sure it's spawn. Got a question along the same lines. I heard a theory today that depending on Iran's next step, that the IDF is going to use their actions as an excuse to pretty much take out the nuclear reactors this time around too. Does that sound reasonable or no?
Go back to the mid 2000s. There was about, I don't know how many, I can't remember the exact number, the Iranian centrifuges which run in the Iranian nuclear plants. The Israelis were able to infiltrate that program and set in the equivalent of a Trojan or whatever, or some sort of wormhole, and go in, and it's basically stopped them in their tracks. But all it did was buy time. But also as well, you in intel circles, you learn more by failure than by success. So so as much as anybody thinking that a house has an alarm system, if you keep banging the window, you'll find out quick enough whether there's something going to activate, something will respond. Likewise as well, the fact that the inaction and inability of the IAEA, the International Atomic Agency, to monitor stuff, and the fact that they were not allowed access to it, that also bought the Iranians time. But this is going to show a different dynamic here. I think, yes, they will do something. I don't know if people understand the other philosophy that Israel has. And for those that are familiar with Israel and Israeli politics in particular, Israel is a unique synergy of different things. And it has a Talmud, it has a Torah, it has a complete biblical outlook from it. So it's quite prepared to do whatever it takes to have the temple to be rebuilt again. If that results in deployment of short-range nuclear weapons, they will do it, because Israel is already prepared to put some of its population underground. And so this is a likelihood. This is very, very likely.
To which I say, game on. It's long overdue.
I think it is game on. I think it's long overdue. I think the response in every way from IDF has been very measured. And people will say, there's so many thousand Palestinians killed. None of those figures are substantiated. They're given by the Hamas Ministry of Health, so it's complete and utter bullshit. There's no way you can justify that. But yet media outlets repeat and repeat. In fact, U.S. government administration repeats the figures that are given by the Hamas administration. So there's no credibility in that side of it. Number two, people forget something. People think that a lot of the Islamic jihad and jihadistic type of attitudes is only to the Arab side. They forget, if you believe that God is on your side and Israel believes its God is on its side, nothing can stop you.
No,
because that's the thing. And this is the mistake that the Iranians are making. They think by sheer numbers, that's it. If you look at the Iran-Iraq war in the 80s and how many million were killed, it was two versions of Islam, Shia and Sunni, went head on at it, right? And the result of that was it changed the politics of that region for the next 30 years.
Yeah.
And it allowed the likes of Saddam and the Ba'ath Party to rise and do their thing.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen is the vacuum that's going to happen after this is the question, is the watch out for.
So the Turks like to play dirty ball because, believe it or not, I was held hostage by the Turks for 4 hours. Because coming back from my assignment in Israel, the plane had to make a stop in Istanbul. I was not allowed off the plane. I was the only one that was not allowed off the plane because I had an Israeli stamp in my passport. They kept me on the plane. Yeah,
I got you.
But here's my next topic. It's related to this. Islam's goal is to take over the world. Let's face it, England is gone. It's almost up, it's almost under
people are rising up. People are rising up.
Almost under total Muslim control now. People are rising up. And the reason I bring this up, a very good friend of mine, Jerry Uber, who is a faithful viewer of our podcast, brought this up. The 3 little kids that were stabbed. Yeah. Now, they're saying that the perp was born in the UK, but they're not divulging his whether or not he's a Muslim. What say you on that?
Well, I tell you, from the mid-90s, when you had the Tory party and the Conservative party in, you had a change in it, sort of post-Thatcher, right?
Yeah.
So you're looking at the type of immigration that was coming into the UK changed dramatically. Former members of the Commonwealth, former members of the British Empire were allowed access to it. In the mid-90s, you had Hong Kong being handed back to the Chinese. And so that was mid-90s or late 90s, I don't know, because it was leased by the British government from the Chinese, and the lease was up and they gave it back. So Hong Kongers could get a UK passport. Now, bring it around to immigration. Every small city in the UK has a mosque. So the architectural landscape of the UK changed dramatically over about 20 years. If you go up around Blackburn or Manchester, you hear people talking about the green onion. What's the green onion? It's the top of the mosque that they're talking.
The minaret.
Right? Their own vernacular. So, in a lot of the city councils, like small municipalities, Sharia law became enshrined in some of the workings of it. There was a cultural sensitivity introduced to it, where primarily you had to be sensitive to be all-inclusive. This is where the problem began. Then after that, the police policies changed in relation to it. So policing changed as well, and a lot of the unlike here in the US, you don't have a sheriff. You've got a chief of police who's appointed effectively. They're not elected; they're appointed. Okay, so what happens is the local town council appoints the Home Office will appoint a chief of police, but there's an input from the local municipality. So politics comes into play. So you've got somebody who's liberal in their politics, but is actually a cop, is a bobby. He's going to toe the line with those who's paying his wages and who put him in power. So then you had the immigration that came in, and you're talking about, mid-1980, 85 to 1995, the amount of Pakistani and Indian immigrants that came in was incredible. In the same 10-year span, in 89, 90, and 91, you have the fall of the Berlin Wall, you have the Soviet Union dismantling, the empire goes down, so you got an influx of more people again. Traditionally, the immigration policy, UK didn't have an immigration policy until about the mid-60s, when the West Indies and Caribbean countries were coming in. You had the Jamaican Yardies coming in, crime gangs coming in. You had guys from Montserrat, Barbados. Anyone coming in from the Caribbean came in. Anyone that was a member of the British Commonwealth was given access to the UK mainland. So the cultural makeup of English people changed dramatically. The actual what happened was, what was once, and this is going to sound all wrong, but this is just the reality. And if you're sensitive, get over the damn thing. England was always seen to be Anglo-white.
Yeah.
Now, an English guy in the mid-80s, he could have an accent like anywhere, didn't have the same skin tone, but he was an English passport holder, or he was naturalized, or he had kids, and they became naturalized UK citizens. So they brought with them their culture. Now bring it to the Islamic side of it. England was very favourable and very disposed towards helping people out. It is a generous nation. It is a generous nation. And so it gave access to people to benefits. And England became seen to be a place to go to if you wanted to get help and have a better quality of life. If you come from a local crap hole in North Africa, you're going to want to make your happy way across the channel because the French don't want you. And they kick you across the English Channel and you end up in the UK. So the level of benefits that some people were getting. So the same people who are diametrically opposed to what was English common law and religion was now taking benefits. And so the seeds of this began in the mid-80s after Thatcher, after the bombing of Libya by Ronald Reagan and by Thatcher. That changed the face of it. There was a cultural guilt to the fact that people got wiped out in North Africa. But Libya was a terrorist state. Now we have Afghanistan doing the same damn thing. So we're probably not back out there in the next year and a half to 18 months. So if you're a sponsorship of terror, you expect not everybody who is a Muslim is a terrorist. Like not every Irish guy was an IRA member, but yet you were treated the same damn way until proven otherwise. So trust but verify. There's point in that, and that's how it should be. But now in the UK, you have the people who are indigenous to England are in the minority. Their laws are in the minority.
Right.
One of the good things when Brexit happened and they left the European Union, they reaffirmed themselves, their sovereignty, they reaffirmed their identity, and the handcuffs were taken off them in relation to how they can implement policy, both domestic and otherwise. And that's what you're seeing right now. Right. People are simply pissed off of being second-class citizens in their own country.
Now, where do you think the United States is heading?
Same way.
I think we're headed down that same deep, dark road.
Same way. There's no difference.
Right.
The Europe that I left, is here right now. And I'm ashamed to say that,
So the other day I saw an interview with Kamala Harris saying that her goal is to get all the AR-15s off the street.
Impossible.
Well, I think it's a good start of gun grabs, because if they do it by executive order like they did to the gun stocks, if you had a rifle with a stock on it, until the Supreme Court reversed the ATF, you were considered a felon in possession if you had the stock.
Correct. No.
So if she goes ahead, and let's, I was born at night, but not last night. I don't want to hear about voting, because voting doesn't mean shit today. It's not like the olden days where you get up on November 5th, you put on a shirt and tie, and you get dressed, and you went and voted. And
it was an occasion. It was an occasion.
Yeah, and at 10 o'clock at night, you knew who the winner is. That don't happen anymore. So I think Kamala is the anointed one. Don't be surprised. You want to put a little wager on it. But anyway, she could probably do it by executive order and just make us miserable. And if they go ahead and they reform the court like they want to do, I guess all bets are off. Am I headed down a good rabbit hole or a bad rabbit hole?
I think it's a bad rabbit hole. And just because she writes an executive order doesn't mean it's going to happen. It's the same thing. People in hell want ice water, but it doesn't mean they're going to get it.
I think there's a way around it. I think there's a number of ways around it. First and foremost, the ATF, BATFE was born from the IRS. It's not. It's a sister agency that was born from IRS. The National Firearms Act, all the gun control elements, the stuff that's already on the books, they're already enforceable, right? It didn't stop crooks shooting at Trump a matter of 2 weeks ago now, right? So the other thing is, right, just the fact that the demographic that's reported is always either one ethnicity and one type of politic. That's the first and foremost. Funding is the key to it. If you can fund an action, you can deploy that action. So to me, I tell you, my opinion right now is never underestimate the power of stupidity. People are going to vote emotionally. They're not going to vote because on both sides of the aisle, they're going to vote emotionally. Number two, you're going to see a lot of the pro-Trump people are very sure that he's going to win. That's not a given. because you're now having a sort of celebrity type status going on. And I have PTSD, which is pretty tired of stupid Democrats. I'm tired of them, right? So I am to the point of where you're going to have a situation where you have to get off your butt and actually go vote and not assume that your vote is going to be not worth doing because it's going to be a landslide. I think it's going to be a very tight race.
I think she's going to win. I think she's going to win by double digits.
I think that they're going to do the John Wayne syndrome. They're going to stuff down the vote in every sense of the word. They're going to present everything they can. Her record is not much to sing about. It's the funding that she raised. The Democrats were in sheer panic 10, 11 days ago. Now all of a sudden, the machinery that was there to support Ice Cream Joe Biden is now gone to help her out, and she's got a celebrity status, and people are blinded. Unfortunately, people are colorblind because they're blinded by color. They're not they're not blinded by merit. Honestly, I think it's going to be very, very close. For my own personal reasons, I wouldn't call it right now. I think Trump has potential to win, but it also means that whatever happens with this election, the implications of this election particularly are going to affect every aspect of every American's life, and it's going to affect American foreign policy for decades to come. She's never done anything, and she's ever done by executive action. She's only got 100 days. She's only got 100 days. Every president has only got 100 days to roll out effective legislation. If you do something by executive action, that is very difficult to implement, because you can stonewall stuff for a very long time. Her taking guns, she's only gonna drive up gun sales like Obama tried to do, right? And the result of that is now 2 elections later after Obama, there's more guns now, and the price of an AR-15 went from $1,000 down to
better
$400.
guns.
But Obama's still calling the shots.
Absolutely, yeah.
Obama, Valerie Jarrett, and what's his name, Jake Sullivan.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I got a couple of thoughts on this subject.
Go ahead.
Thank you. They're doing the same thing to Kamala Harris now that they did to Barack Obama. They took him, who was an unknown community organizer from somewhere in Chicago, and made him. The media elevated him to be the president of the United States. He was a construct, and they're doing the exact same thing to her now. Okay, she's gone from being a pretty much useless prosecutor in California to potentially be the president of the United States. Again, the media is constructing that, but it's not real. It's all smoke and mirrors. We've seen it done to us once. We let them get away with it the second time. I'm not really sure that everybody's going to let it happen the third time. Now, as far as gun control goes, let's go worst case scenario. She, in her first 100 days as president, she goes ahead and signs an executive order. You're going to confiscate every semi-automatic rifle in the country, and certain handguns too. How do you see that playing out? Who's going to do that? Is the military going to go kicking people's doors down, trying to gather up these guns? No, they're not. They can't.
No, but God forbid if you find yourself in a position where you're out there with one and you get caught.
Well, yeah, but let me finish where I was going with that. The next option is the sheriffs, okay? Because the sheriffs, they're not going to do it, especially here in Florida. There's no way in hell.
Not going to do it, no.
If that shit happens here, Rennie, you're in a whole different area of the world up there. But if that shit happens here, they're going to close the fucking border to this state, and it'll be the sheriffs out there on the front line, along with the Florida militia and so forth and so on, and we'll be teetering on that end of the Civil War. Are the Democrats willing to risk that, knowing that it would quite literally burn the entire nation to the ground?
I think they are.
Yeah, it's possible. They're a bunch of
They'll
evil
go to any
bastards.
extreme to stay in power.
Yeah,
They don't want to give up the power. They don't care about the people. They want the power first, and the money second.
Nomad, what do you think, buddy?
Well, I think money and power are both connected, and history has shown that if you have no money, you got no options. If you got power to control the money, control the purse, you control the politics of the moment. I think Rennie is right. I think you're right in a sense with that. I think I would think if they were to go on to implement it, they'd have to create some sort of federal agency to actually go and do that. Because sheriffs are constitutional officers. They're, I mean, down in our part of the country here, and then the nearest biggest city to me, the sheriff, when he's a constitutional officer, he's an out-and-out Democrat. And when he wears the sheriff's badge, he's a politician first and sheriff's. You can see that, right? Chiefs of police in major cities are all indictable for the crimes that they allow committed in their thing. If you want to stop something, you have access to the federal government to roll out wherever you have, whether it's an agency with 3 letters or whatever letters you've got, multiple letters. You've got access to it. You saw it in Portland, Oregon, when they set up this version of Portlandia, where they basically were, for a number of months, it was allowed to happen. It was lawlessness in Portland, which was the bastion and the seat of all things. Remember, Starbucks came from Seattle, Washington, right? And Portland was a liberal city, and those 2 cities were ruined by protesters. Antifa came out of it. BLM were screaming and burning down cities. The same guys, we're going to burn this bitch down. Guys jumping on the TV, shouting and saying that. And now where are they? They were nothing but a domestic terrorist organization, but no one has a set of kahunas to call them out on it. And now even African Americans themselves are saying BLM are a scam. So as regards the practical rolling out of trying to confiscate weapons, look overseas what's happened. An example that people always go to is Australia or New Zealand, right? I'm telling you right now, you have to have a reason to have a firearm there. You have to have land and whatever in the UK and in Ireland and other places as well. You got to go to, you have to have a license for an air pistol or an air rifle or a crossbow. You can't have body armor. You can't have pepper spray. You can't have you can't have a telescopic baton. You can't have an inch over a knife over 2.5 inches. So they can legislate small stuff to make your life difficult, but it's basically going to be impossible to find every single weapon. And what it's going to do is it's deliberately going to engineer a split in the country. The State of the Union is not good right now in any way.
No.
I agree with Rene. I think they're out to burn it to the ground politically, to restart it again and have their version of what the US should be.
What the US, exactly.
So, reimagine.
Reimagine. Don't forget though, I know some cops and have said to me point blank to my face that they're in favor of gun control.
That's a good point.
Those are the ones that wouldn't hesitate to go bashing down somebody's door and taking out their guns. So they are constitutional officers in a sense where they've taken an oath to protect and defend the country.
The Constitution,
Right,
yes.
by the same token, they believe in gun control. They'd bash down your door to take your gun, you know? So that's not good. And let's not forget, we're all smart. This is how the Roman Empire fell. The upper echelon figured out they could pillage the treasury and take the money and do what they wanted and control the people, and thus the Roman Empire collapsed. So,
okay, on that happy note, let's take about a 30-minute break.
30-minute break?
3-minute break. Tres.
Then when we come back, we're going to go to Nomad on staying safe in certain situations.
Is that what you want to do? Do you want to do up next? You want to do that or no? I don't think that's what's on the agenda here.
I have no idea, but I'll run with something is on before I'm kicked out of the house.
Well, what I was thinking about, since we're kind of freestyling tonight, so maybe just stay with that for this one, and we will have a discussion about the FBI hearings concerning the assassination attempt. Does that sound like a plan?
Good deal.
Okay, you guys want to do that?
Yeah.
All right, let's come back in about 3 minutes then.
See ya.
All right.
I'm back on.
And we're back. Oh, yeah, okay. I don't know where Rennie went.
I'm having ice cream. I don't care.
Okay, yeah, it doesn't make any difference. What flavor?
Mint chocolate chip.
Oh, nice.
It's all inclusive.
In other words, he's pulling a Joe Biden.
Yeah,
Hey, it's
that's vanilla.
I'm more Tom and Jerry than Ben and Jerry. I resemble that remark. Screw you and your ancestors, buddy.
And the horse they rode in on.
Yes, it is.
Hey, leave the horse out of this.
Hey,
Hey, does anybody?
How close to horses I am right here, right now. And hey, it's you, buddy.
Thanks. All right, so let's talk about the hearings or whatever that ridiculousness was. When my nephew called earlier, that was his topic of conversation was because we all have the same background, basically military background and so forth.
Right.
And he said, shouldn't somebody be getting fired because of this?
Well,
so
yeah, but okay, so Cheeto resigned.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
They got an acting director.
Mm-hmm.
So who do you fire? The guy on the ground?
well, all right. For example, there were apparently a couple of cops or somebody that was supposed to have been on that roof initially, and they didn't want them up there because it was too hot.
First of all, protecting the president is the responsibility of the U.S. Secret Service,
Correct.
not the local police department.
Yeah.
So to throw blame in the direction of the local PD, if anything, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say the local PD they're the ones that saved Trump's life, because when the other cop boosted the second cop up onto the roof, and he was hanging on by his hands, and he looked up, the guy turned and pointed the rifle at him.
Correct.
Just enough distraction that he had to hurry and get his shots off, and that's why he missed. We teach that in How to Survive Active Shooter Events.
Yes,
If
sir.
you can get the guy, you can distract the guy and get him to leave his shooting platform and turn his gun. I don't want to use foul language on the radio, on the air, but he's kind of fucked, because now he's got to take the time to turn the gun back and reacquire his target and be able to get the shot off with precision. That's going to take him an extra 2 or 3 minutes. Somebody's going to be able to react and do something in the meantime.
Yeah, definitely. But back to the original point, though, was whether or not somebody should have got fired.
I agree. Somebody should have got fired, but who?
Well, during the hearing, they were saying, that the FBI and the Secret Service both are apolitical, right? Okay.
No, they're
This-
not.
But this entire administration has been political from the very beginning.
The
They do
FBI has been politicized since J. Edgar Hoover was prancing around the office with women's clothing on.
Exactly.
As
They
far
haven't
as
changed.
the Secret Service goes, I think they've been politicized since they allowed the raid at Mar-a-Lago.
Well, yeah,
Okay,
they haven't. No,
that should have never happened.
they haven't changed since, like you said, J. Edgar Hoover. They're extremely political. They do the same Democrat bullshit, the same this liberal nonsense about they don't accept responsibility for anything.
Nope.
Nothing is anybody's fault. They always blame it on somebody else. And this goes all the way from the top head. You know, fish rots from the head down, right? So this goes all the way to the top. Every Democrat, or actually pretty much every political regime for the last 50 years. Nobody wants to take, whatever happened to the buck stops here. They don't do that anymore.
I have a different take on this completely. I'm
Okay.
playing devil's advocate, so forgive me, fellas, in advance.
No.
Yeah, I want to hear it.
All right, here we are. Okay. I think the heads that you see, the talking heads you see on all of these hearings, they're utterly irrelevant. They know that they're basically passing through anyway. That the lady that was fired, her background in Secret Service was not in protective detail. It was in logistics planning, right?
Right.
Second thing is, most law enforcement, when you have what we call in military and in law enforcement interoperability, when you have different elements of a jigsaw puzzle operating together that only operate maybe once or twice in a year, if at all, the whole selection of that venue was the first issue. The fact is that you should have a joint comms room where you have a representative from every single agency who's going to be involved, going to be inside in the one room. So should and when something happens, you have a way of communicating everything together at the one time, and they relate because there's the infrastructure for joint operations amongst law enforcement. Unless it's federal, it's different radio frequencies, it's different language, it's different levels of training. Listen, a SWAT team from a small town may have 20 guys on it, but 5 to 8 might be the actual SWAT team. The rest are reserve elements of it. So it could be a local deputy who does a beat of 100 miles in a county. But then there's an active shooter situation goes up, and he changes his mission, and he goes into your last level of training is the first thing you go to. Mm-hmm. Okay. So what seems to have happened is that there was a complete breakdown and a degree of arrogance. I'm going to say this, unfortunately, with local law enforcement, especially not the sheriff's end of it, but the state trooper end of it is what I saw. I saw this Colonel Paris, whatever his damn name was, on the hearing. He was an arrogant SOB because his attitude was, well, my people did this and no one communicated to us. Listen, if you're taking the pay from a state, you're responsible for making sure that your side of it is covered 100%. So they're going to see the risk or lay blame to each side of it. Secret Service is 90% at fault, but in over-reliance upon the illusion that local law enforcement are trained at a level operationally as a QRF to deal with something, there's your problem. Number 2, unless you have someone who's actually been shot at in a previous life, you've no damn clue about stuff like that, right? So what I'm coming to is that who should be fired are the people who fund these operations. But here's the problem. Every agency, state, local, and federal, has the equivalent of a permanent undersecretary or somebody who is there no matter what big ass fits the big chair. If that's moved out politically, the same people who make the decisions and manage the money and delegate resources are still there. So you can call it a deep state if you want to call it, but you've got professional bureaucrats who never are elected. They're appointed by the agency internally, an internal staff promotion. They're the ones. This is not the first time that Secret Service has had an integrated situation. The SWAT team, if you look at the video footage of the SWAT team locally, one of them points a gun directly at Trump's vehicle that they were putting him into.
Yeah, I saw that.
Weapon safety wasn't there, right? There was no training for local LEOs or for state on drone detection and drone technology to counter that. The fact, as you said earlier, Fog, about it being too hot on a roof, a metal roof in the middle of summer. Well, shouldn't somebody have thought about that? When you're a soldier, right? You put up with stuff. It's part and nature of the battle. Wherever you land is where you are, and you deal with what you got to deal with. This is not their first rodeo. So the failures, the arrogance of Secret Service bled into the lack of experience and training. Because you can't make a white belt in karate a black belt because a fight's coming. You can't do that. So you can't. So the resources that were there were not proportional to the risk. And the thing is, as well, the political decision or otherwise to remove more experienced personnel from Trump's actual detail, that has to be asked. Why was Jill Biden? Why was her security on a shopping trip more important than a potential nominee? And I tell you why. Because Trump was not the official nominee of the GOP until after the convention. So he was not allowed to have the resources that would be needed. But the fact that the intel wasn't relayed, there wasn't a common radio frequency for different elements to talk and communicate. All of these things here have contributed to a whole combination of factors which led to it. The people who should be fired are the people who are at the original meeting with the different elements of it. If the sheriff is at fault, put him at fault.
Right.
If it's the local colonel for the local state troopers in charge of a task force, his ass needs to go. So I'm saying there should be nobody spared in this. Nobody spared at all. I love law enforcement, but I tell you something, I'm anti-stupid when it comes to it.
Yeah.
You know?
See, so historically speaking,
I'm having ice cream.
well, speaking from experience, so the feds don't like to share information with local law enforcement. They don't. It's just a given, you know.
Always.
And they'll tell you all the time, you know, it's on a need to know basis only. You know, after 9/11, this was all supposed to change. That's why we had to sit through fucking miserable hours in fucking incident command school. Taking all these classes,
ICS, a national system.
all these certificates, but they don't use it today, you know.
No.
And the Secret Service has a vehicle. It's a truck. It looks like it has a foam cone on it.
Correct, yeah.
If that truck was on scene, they would have been able to jam that guy's radar. I wouldn't have been able to get it launched.
Yeah, correct. All of the frequencies used for those drones are all 2.5 gigs, 3 gigs, 5 gigs. They're all domestic, demilitarized frequencies. They're consumer electronics.
It's
easy to do.
You tell me.
You're onto something with the lack of communications between the different agencies, and it's been like that forever. I thought we fixed the communications issue after 9/11.
No,
because that was one of the major issues there, and it's just gotten worse. I mean, well, for example, we'd be out doing dope deals, and the FBI was always the worst at this kind of thing. And everybody knew to call the deconfliction line before you did a dope deal, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So you made sure that you weren't buying dope from each other. You know, cops weren't buying dope for other cops or whatever.
Yeah.
We had every freaking time we do a major deal that the FBI would be involved in, we wouldn't know it. You know, and we'd be doing a buy bust, and we're buying dope, they're selling dope or guns or whatever, and it turned out to be from each other because they didn't call the damn deconfliction line.
Correct.
This was 30 years ago. Why the hell hasn't this issue changed? Now,
go ahead.
Well, all right. One other point there, and then we can continue on that. And I completely lost my train of thought. Just went off the track. So go right ahead.
My plan worked. I screwed you up, Fogman. The two of the most recent examples of it was the Uvalde shooting in Texas. When you had multiple agencies responding, and it was CBP's QRF guys, quick response force, responded and actually breached inside because the guys were waiting. They were trained in active shooter, but never did it. Right. Trading with paintball is not the same as live fire. Okay, it's now as an active shooter response, and Rennie, you know this, right? Yeah. Everybody is an active shooter responder right now. Everybody.
I've been involved in 2 active shooter incidents.
I got you. I won a few years back, but not in recent from a civvy point of view. But the comms was the issue there. Down in Orlando, when there was a Pulse nightclub shooting, there was 30 plus agencies responded. Same delays again, no common communications. So people The left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing, and you've got little fiefdoms and kingdoms. Listen, there's 19,000 agencies under the umbrella of Homeland Security. That's 18 to 19,000 fragmented pieces of a jigsaw puzzle that doesn't talk to each other. It's the same system that frustrates us, protects us. It's the same system that allowed 9/11 to happen.
Well, I can't mention his name or where he's from, but I know one of the first snipers that was through the door at the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Florida.
Yeah.
I know the guy personally, and but zero communications again.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
It happens more frequently than you care to realize.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, it happens all the time. It
So
just never changes.
I preach when I teach. I preach. If you see something, say something. So my question would be, who the fuck do you say something to? You don't know who to call or what to do.
Somebody just did a recent study on that that I was reading recently about see something, say something, and you know how like if you have a tip of some kind, so they called and it was a test. They called in a terrorist tip hotline with information about somebody that was suspicious and so forth and so on, and the operator at the see something, say something hotline transferred them to FEMA in Tampa. And they were saying, well, we don't know what to do with this. We deal with hurricanes. When FEMA got the call in Tampa, the operations center, we don't do terrorism, we do hurricanes. So that's pretty much where the see something, say something hotline, how it works here.
It's the equivalent. It's the equivalent of a set on an old Western movie. You see the saloon door, and during the fight, the cowboy's hat never fell off. And in behind the saloon door was nothing but a backdrop. There was nothing in there.
Right.
So the issue at hand is that we've learned nothing. We've learned nothing at all.
No.
I tell you, it's down to individuals on teams, on the day, on the scene, making a decision to go in and breach and do what they're trained to do. There's a reluctance now for people to do their job. People are scared. Law enforcement were scared off their job and handcuffed by doing their job after BLM. And people were just so sensitive and butt sensitive about color. Listen, if you're an American or wherever you are, you're going to bleed red anyway, okay? If you're doing something wrong and you fail to follow proper lawful order, there's a consequence to that, okay? You're not being stopped on a traffic stop because of your ethnicity. It's because you basically did something to get the attention of somebody on the beat to pull you to that side. And one of the most dangerous things you can have, and we all know it, is a traffic stop. You don't know what way that's going to go. You have no idea how that's going to go belly up. So when it comes to educating people, you're dealing with a media mechanism and infrastructure that doesn't know what it's talking about. It still calls AR-15s automatic rifles. They have no idea what they're talking about. So the language and the discourse and the dissonance of things, the language is not understood because people have the mindset and the mind span of a goldfish. If it doesn't get them in the first 20 or 30 seconds, they just lose all interest and go on. And, this is what's going to also lead to the election going the wrong way because people are just not interested.
I don't think Biden needs a cognitive test. I think the fucking people that voted for him need the cognitive test.
I think it hit him in the pocket. I think when it hits them in their pocket, they're going to realize the mistake they made. The America that people grew up in,
it's non-existent.
Is gone. It's gone. It's gone. There's very few places now where you would have. That's it. I saw something today. I think one of you guys sent it on to me. Someone in a Mission barbecue and they're playing the U.S. national anthem as they do at midday every day, and somebody who is not disposed to that. Put something on X, whatever it was, and I don't have any of that stuff, but you guys passed it on, and I'm going, this is what's going to be voting for the other creature in November. So we deserve what we get. We deserve what we put up there. Unfortunately, we have to be cognizant of that.
No, and one other thing I want to add too is just so people know what we're talking. don't forget though, different agencies have different rules of engagement.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so that's something to be aware of too.
No issue. All right, fellas, we're a little over an hour now. I think we've covered some stuff. Do you guys want to keep going, or do you want to? What do you think? I'm pretty much out of stuff to talk about for this time.
I'm out of ice cream.
Well,
Doesn't
then
matter to
that's
me.
enough. Then we just got to quit. Then we got ice cream. I mean, damn, that's like the end of the world.
I wouldn't want his ice. I wouldn't want his ice cream. I wouldn't want to have to drink his ice cream.
Well, I tell you what, right? If you saw us sitting across from me right now, you'd be worried too, because he's looking at my empty bowl of ice cream, and I tell you something, it's not looking pretty. It's looking good.
Is it one of those giant dogs or one of the cats?
No, it's a real life embodiment of an actual Viking, and the last time his people turned up in the 7th and 8th century, they made shit of the place, right? So I'm just watching out for my ice cream right now. But in saying that, right, here's the thing. This coming week is going to be interesting. There's some news stories coming out of Europe as a result of what happened in the UK with the Southport stabbings. How people are after waking up to some stuff that's going on there. We just touched on. Second thing is, there's talk in European media about a ceasefire with Ukraine and Russia because they're both exhausted from it now, and they need to get something in place before the snows of winter come in around the middle of October. And because if this conflict in the Mideast takes off, there's just too much stuff going on, and there's not enough resources. Because when you're also involved in a war, you got to defend yourself against any other actions as well.
I think I think they're in a rush for a ceasefire because they want to give Kamala credit for brokering it.
Well, I think
that's my opinion.
I'm with you. I wouldn't put her in charge of a Salvation Army platoon at a soup station.
Well, she did an awesome job on the border. I mean, I can't criticize her for that.
Well, it depends on which border you're talking about. It's not the U.S. border by any means. She was never even down there. Her record stands as an indictment of her inaction. But again, stupid people vote stupid people in.
Well, now they're backing off the theory that she was the border czar. She wasn't the border czar.
Yeah, they're scrubbing all that.
They're scrubbing all that.
Well, that's back to the construct. They're making her something that she isn't.
Yeah.
What about the last thing, folks? What about Project 25?
So Project 2025, I heard the director quit today. Supposedly it's still alive and well. The Democrats still get their panties up in a bunch over it. They still think Donald Trump is behind it.
Yeah, he has nothing to do with it.
Nothing to do with him, right? But it's going to be interesting to see in this coming week. There's people are going to have to make decisions on stuff right now. I was a bit disappointed to hear for calls for U.S. troops to have boots on the ground should Iran decide to do stuff. That's not going to happen. There's no way. There's just no way we can afford that. It's absolutely out of the question. It's out of the question. And Israel knows that. And when Kamala Harris snubbed Bibi Netanyahu last week and then met him privately, but still uttered the words to keep her supporters happy, he ended up down in South Florida the following day after that because a relative of his lives down there. And went to Mar-a-Lago. So the fact that he deliberately went to Mar-a-Lago to talk to Trump and Trump's people, that tells you where Israel sees where its allies are, not in the Democrat Party.
No.
So that's damning.
We are rudderless. We're a rudderless nation right now, though. We don't have leadership.
Yeah, we're very weak. Very weak.
God forbid if something happens between now and whenever. Screwed.
All right, fellas, on that happy note, let's wrap it up.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for both of you for joining us. As always, it's something interesting to talk about.
Appreciate it.
So go ahead and close this out with, keep the ones you love close and give them a big hug and be prepared to self-rescue. So I'm going to say good night.
That's good night,
fellas.
Good night.
All right. And
it was a pleasure commiserating with you two.
And we will be back on next Wednesday at 8 p.m. as always. So we'll
provided we're not nuked. Yeah.
All right. Good night. Good night.